Hello, this is Bill Federer with An American Minute. Bartolomé de las Casas, are you familiar with his story? He was the apostle of the Indies, and he died in 1566. In 1502, Bartolomé de las Casas left Spain for West Indies, where he became a hacendado of a plantation, a ruler of a plantation, and he owned slaves, Native American slaves. And Bartolomé de las Casas participated in slave raids, where they would raid different islands and capture Native Americans and force them into slavery. He went on military expeditions against the native populations of Hispaniola, which later became Haiti, and then Cuba. And in 1511, though, something happened that changed Bartolomé de las Casas' life. It began to change when he heard a sermon from Dominican Father Antonio de Montesinos, speaking on the verse, "I am a voice crying in the wilderness." Las Casas became convicted, and he left his plantation and he became a priest. Matter of fact, he became the first priest ordained in the New World. In 1514, while preparing a Pentecost Sunday sermon, Las Casas read from the book of Ecclesiasticus, Sirach, chapter 34, verses 18 to 22, which said that if one offers as a sacrifice an animal that they have obtained dishonestly, it is unacceptable to the Lord, and it is as murder to deprive someone of their means of making a living. Well, Bartolomé de las Casas was convicted in his heart, and he went on to dedicate the rest of his life to stopping the enslavement of Native Americans. He became the Bishop of Chiapas and was officially appointed as, quote, the protector of the Indians, unquote. In 1515, now just to give you a little bearing of what time this is in world history, 1515 is 2 years before Martin Luther started the Reformation. Now, Bartolomé de las Casas and Dominican Father Antonio de Montesinos went back to Spain, where they met with King Ferdinand on Christmas Eve. Now, we're familiar with King Ferdinand. Ferdinand and Isabella are the ones who sent Columbus to America. Well, Bartolomé de las Casas met with King Ferdinand on Christmas Eve. The king agreed to their cause of standing up for the rights of Native Americans and stopping their enslavement. But unfortunately, King Ferdinand died within a month before he was able to do anything about the situation. Las Casas, now being around 40 years old, petitioned the new king, 16-year-old Charles V of Spain. And he petitioned him to end the military conquest of the New World and to use peaceful means to convert the Indians. In 1520, Bartolomé de las Casas founded 3 Christian Indian towns in Venezuela, but Spanish encomiendas plantation owners stirred up the natives to destroy them. Well, Las Casas went on. In the year 1531, we see something happened that was a major impact in Latin America. On Tepeyac Hill outside of the former Aztec capital of Mexico City, the story of Indian Juan Diego and the Virgin of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Guadalupe. And this resulted in an estimated 15 million Indians being baptized within the next 20 years in what may be considered the largest mass conversion in world history. Well, there are stories of the doors of the church opening in the morning and a steady stream of Indians all day long coming up and being baptized, just a continuous line of Indians because of viewing the painting, which, I don't know if painting's the right term, but the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And the immense symbolism of the dress she was wearing symbolized that she was pregnant with royalty, and then other parts of the painting showed that she was pregnant with the Son of God. And so it's just something that had so much meaning in it that when the Native Americans saw that, that convinced them of the miraculous origin of the birth of Christ. Well, in 1536, Las Casas criticized the Franciscan friar Montolinia for being too quick to baptize thousands of Indians before they were fully instructed in the faith. So today, someone wants to convert, they go through classes to learn about the faith. Well, Las Casas wrote a treatise, a work, and the title of it was Concerning the Only Way of Drawing All Peoples to the True Religion. Las Casas became hated by those profiting off of slavery. In the year 1550, Las Casas had to, believe it or not, defend that Indians were fully human in a debate against Juan Ginés de Sepúlveda, who eloquently argued that Indians were less than human and therefore subject to enslavement. Now, let's just pause here. Could you imagine this? Here is a brilliant speaker, Sepúlveda, arguing that the Native Americans were not fully human. Isn't that the same argument that's used today of the baby in the womb, where these people use their eloquent arguments to try to say, well, it's not fully human and so forth, and therefore it's justified to murder them? Well, here we have Bartolomé de las Casas in a debate arguing, saying, no, the natives are human beings, and therefore it is a sin to enslave them. Well, this highlights two threads that you can trace through world history. What are they? Greed and the gospel. So you always have people motivated by the gospel, and they're the ones that want to have orphanages and dig wells in villages and have medical clinics, and the Mother Teresas that will take somebody out of a ditch that's in India and give them a bath and a meal and try to treat them like a human being, because she said, I see Jesus in every person. I say to myself, this is sick Jesus, and I serve because I love Jesus. So you always have people motivated by the gospel, but you always have people motivated by greed. And they are the ones that enslave the Native Americans and enslave the Africans, and they're the ones that take land from the Indians, and they're the ones that vote for candidates they think will help their pocketbook, even though that candidate stands for immorality. So the two threads of greed and the gospel still exist today, and they exist in every one of us. And so we have to make the decision. Are we going to be motivated by greed and trusting in ourselves and in the world system for our daily bread, or are we going to trust in the Lord for our daily bread and stand up for righteousness and stand up for those who are weak and who don't have a voice of their own? Protect the widow and the orphan. Well, Bartolomé de las Casas was one of those that was motivated by the gospel. He wanted to care for the poor. Bartolomé de las Casas spent 60 years of his life fighting for the rights of Native Americans, leading him to be considered one of the first advocates of universal human rights. Las Casas declared in his tract, Confessario, that any Spaniard who refused to release his Indians would be denied forgiveness of sins. He would have been a fiery preacher today. Las Casas wrote a brief report on the destruction of the Indians and Apologetica Historia de las Indias. When these two works were translated and spread around Europe, an outrage arose pressuring the Spanish monarch to issue new laws ending the enslavement of Indians. Well, no sooner did the rejoicing happen than, unfortunately, the greedy, motivated plantation owners decided to replace their Native American slaves with African slaves purchased from the Muslim slave markets. So there always is the devil trying to work his plan, but we need to use our lives to stand up for righteousness for the Lord in the plan that He has for each of us. Well, Bartolomé de las Casas was motivated by the gospel, and he wrote, "The main goal of divine providence in the discovery of these tribes is the conversion and well-being of souls. And to this goal must everything temporal necessarily be directed." He said the very reason that God has let us discover these tribes is so that we can convert their souls to the Lord. So the two threads, greed and the gospel, we can trace them through history, and Bartolomé de las Casas, who died in 1566, was one who was motivated by the gospel. Thank you so much. This is Bill Federer with An American Minute.